All right, so I wanted to make a crash course video on using Style Editor, putting styles into your config for Proffieboard, and just some kind of general knowledge to share. There's a lot of videos out there. There's a lot of people available to help, so take advantage of all the resources. Um, but basically, I've been doing styles for a while, but I started where a lot of you guys are starting. So I didn't even know how to use this editor. I didn't know how to put styles in. I watched Tom Meg25's videos. I asked him a lot of questions. I asked questions on the forum. Professor Zorn, of course, helps out a ton there. So there's a lot of places to get help. There's a lot of information. Um, it may be overwhelming at first, but every single person who's going to answer your questions, except for Fredrik, of course, they started where you're starting. So all I can say is, you know, definitely read. You can't just come in off the street and do this stuff. There's a little bit of education, there's a little bit of learning curve, but once you learn a little bit, I feel like, it opens a whole new world. So where I got my start, and I like to build styles. I like to come up with, new effects. I just enjoy it. It all started here with this style editor. So I wanted to kind of run through this, and then I'll show a few other ways to get styles, and then how to edit some styles, because you might find a style someplace that you kind of like, but there's something you don't particularly want. Sometimes it's color, sometimes it's effect. The great thing about Proffieboard, I think that really just what I enjoy most and what makes it so great is you can do pretty much anything you want. You just have to learn how to do it and take a little bit of time, learn a little bit. It really, you get so much out of it. So Style Editor is where I started. It's actually been a little while since I've used it. So I was helping someone else out and kind of running them through it. And then I noticed Frederick made a lot of improvements. He added a lot of stuff. The functionality has some extra features to it. So again, this is all possible because of him. So I couldn't do anything I do without him having done what he did, and then also all the help he provides, and the people like Tom who kind of got me into this. So this is I am in no way an expert. I think I'm pretty good with styles, but that's only because I've been doing it for a little while. But hopefully I can help some of you guys out so that eventually you'll turn around and help others. So a lot of the people who are helping, a lot of people who offer help on the forum, on the Facebook group, they got their start not knowing anything and asking questions. So it's kind of like it just keeps paying forward. But so style editor. So you got your board, you want to do something with it. You want your lightsaber to have lights. You want those lights to do something. Otherwise, why would you have it? So I want to kind of run through the basics of style editor, how to use it, but this is going to be all really like basic stuff. Like there is so much more. I want you to kind of get a grasp of the basics and then go off from that. So the first part of it, this obviously is your preview. This is meant to be a preview of your blade based on the effects that are in this box. So this box right here, whatever's in this line is what's showing on your screen. Now, to the right of this, this is basically your editing area. You can edit here, but for starting out, this is where you're going to edit. Now below here, below this picture, you're going to see all these buttons. So there's a power, clash, blast, force, lockup, drag. Those are your controls. So that would be like pushing the buttons on your saber, or in the case of clash, obviously creating the clash. Rotate, all rotate does is just rotate that image. So there's not like a rotate function on your saber. And then in hilt, that's meant to represent LED. A lot of these effects, I've never used LED, I'm going to be honest. I've only ever done NeoPixel. But a lot of these effects, I don't think they would look nearly the same on InHilt. But this, I guess, previews that. But I've never really used it. I'm just being honest. But so that's your controls. And then below here, so effects. There's a lot of effects. All these effects do different things. I almost, I blast. So you have blast. Blast, you show it, you click it. Blast fade out is a different kind of blast. So that one, oops, I clicked blast. So blast, so you can show that one. That one's got a fade out, blinking, obviously it's blinking. So you can run through each of these individually. And I would say do that before you're going to sit down and start to put together your style. So this way you kind of preview, what's what, so just so you understand. That's that. Gradient, you get pulsing, random flicker. Now, not all of these effects, though, are specific to what we call the base blade or the main blade. That's what runs normal. So you ignite your blade, what runs normally is your base blade. Then on top of that, you're going to have your clashes, your blasts, your lockups, your drags. So those are effects that are triggered by some action you're doing. So you always want to kind of keep that in mind, is that a blast isn't going to be there unless you hit the blast button. So these are the effects. So then colors. So these are all the named colors. This is by no means all the possible colors. And this I learned later after having used the, the editor for a while. If you click this guy here, you can choose any of the colors you want, or you can mix them here, or you can pick off of here. Now, being that this is the lightsaber is producing lights through those LEDs, the brighter you get towards white, or the closer you get to white, the brighter your blade's going to be. The black being off, essentially, the darker you get, the dimmer your blade's going to be. So, color, it's not just color you have to keep in mind. It's also, this isn't necessarily the color you're going to get. What it is you're also getting that dimming. And so that's just something I've noticed over time is if you're moving more towards the black, that blade's going to be almost off, or you're not going to have any light, and then this is going to be almost fully on. So you usually want to play kind of in the mid-range if you want normal saber effects. But look at your blade. So this the editor is going to be to help you, but it's not exactly what your blade will look like. But you can pick your colors from there, or you could just click in, pick from here, and that'll kind of give you an idea of your colors. And then there are functions. We won't talk about those too much right now. There are effect types. I'm not going to talk about those because you can kind of get lost in those. So you're going to see them because they are part of the editor. As a starting point, I would just leave everything what it does by default in terms of the effects. And then templates. So the nice thing about the templates is it kind of helps you get started. So I'm going to start in the templates. I'll build a style. Then I'll start without a template just so you can kind of see that. And then I'll take you into an existing style and I'll let you see how to kind of edit as you want. So we're going to go down here. I'm going to start with this first template. So I'm going to click it. All right, so now I put that template in. You can see it here. Now the blade's not on. The reason the blade's not on is there's an in-out helper. In-out helper you're going to want. There's an in-out spark tip, basically the same thing, but in-out helper, what that does is that enables ignition and retraction. Without it, your blade is going to be on all the time as soon as you go into that preset, or as soon as you boot up the saber. So you almost always want in-out helper. There's a few instances where you wouldn't, but for our purposes, you always want in-out helper. So now with in-out helper, this is where you'll hear the term nesting, and I'll probably use it. Nesting just means that within here, there's another style. So in-out helper has a simple clash inside of it. Simple clash has a lockup inside of it. Lockup has a blast inside of it. And then there's colors. So now this line here is what's going to show here. So if I hit power, this is what's happening. And I've got a clash, I've got a blast, and I've got a lockup, and then drag is always part of lockup. So drag just affects the tip, but drag is part of a lockup. So if you're looking for drag in here, you won't see it, but if you go over to the right side, which I'm going to do in a second, you will see it. So these are all now in that template. So it gives me a start point. So now let's take a look at it on the right. So most of the editing we're going to do is going to be here on the right. So you can see the nesting again. So in-out helper is the main. Within the in-out helper, you'll see this box of simple clash. So there's a box, and it gets lost the deeper you get, but simple clash. And it's so in-out helper has a base color. Base color, I may have said it already, base color is what your saber does when it's on. When it's ignited, that's what your saber looks like. So the base, it's telling me here, in-out helper has a base color. Base color is simple clash. Simple clash has a base color. That's the base color of simple clash is a lockup. Lockup has a base color. The base color of blast is now blue. So you basically, because it's a template, all this is there for you. But now blue, that's what's happening right now. The blade's on, the blade is blue. It's just blue though. You'll notice there's no effects here. So now I'm going to click in blue. I don't want the blade to be blue. I prefer deep sky blue. So you're going to click just the word blue in base color. You'll see this now will change. All that's going to show is here is the base color. I can now change it. So deep sky blue. So now this changed to deep sky blue. So now I can't see any other effects right here now. And whatever I click is just going to replace this deep sky blue. If I want to back out and see everything now, I'm going to go back up. I'm going to click in out helper. It'll highlight this whole right side now. That means that puts everything here. That makes everything visible. That will let the clash, the blast, and the lockup show. Right. So now, and lockup is a held state. So if you click the lockup button, it stays in lockup until you unclick that button. That's because in the saber action too, you hold the button, lockup will stay until you let it go. Same with drag. So those buttons stay in place until you unclick them, whereas clash and blast are single. They kind of happen once and then they stop. Um, all right, so now I've got a deep sky blue blade. Blast color is white. So I'm going to go over here. Now, the other thing with this editor, anywhere there's a color, you can actually add more effects, and that's nesting once again. So within the base color of my saber, I just have deep sky blue. That just means it's going to stay static blue. I don't want that. I like audio flicker. So I click deep sky blue, and then I click audio flicker. You'll see it changed that deep sky blue into an audio flicker. Now the audio flicker in that effect right now is white and blue. That's not the saber I wanted. So now I can go into white and click white. Now the blade's just white. Now I will click deep sky blue. It's deep sky blue. Now if I want to see what that audio flicker looks like, I could just click audio flicker. So you'll see this will always change based on what effect you're clicking here or color. So now, okay, so that's actually kind of what I was going for. Now audio flicker in the previewer, audio flicker does respond to the hum noise of your blade. So if you have a really aggressive hum or really aggressive sound effects, you're going to get a really aggressive flicker. If you have a really kind of subdued hum, you will not get nearly as much. So audio flicker kind of looks different for every saber, for every different font. But I like that, so I use audio flicker. And then I like the second color being blue. You could also change this. So if you wanted to change out what the secondary color is, you click it, and I will do steel blue. And then let's go back and see what that looks like. So that's what didn't change a whole lot, but if you wanted to mess around with it. All right, so now I've got my base color is an audio flicker. Now that's not all I can do. So, all right, that's nice. Maybe I want to make it look a little more unstable. I can go into the first color, deep sky blue, and now let's add a brown noise flicker. So, and you'll learn these effects. Now, brown noise flicker just got added here, but the default is a green magenta that won't really look good with a blue blade. You might want it, great. That's not really what I was going for. So I'm going to choose the first color again, and I'm going to make the first color deep sky blue. And then the second color, with an unstable, you want something darker. So I'm actually going to go into the RGB editor. And I'm going to have, so it's got blue in here. I'm going to make that blue a lot dimmer. That means it'll be almost off. All right, so that's what that'll look like. So that's dimmer. Now, let's see what that's going to look like. So that's what that looks like. So the other part of brown noise flicker is this grade. That's how unstable it is, essentially. So let's up that. So the higher the number, and I kind of start at 300. So with numbers, you'll notice everything gets grayed out. If you click in something that has to be a number, this is an update that Fredrik did. You can't replace it with something wrong. So those you'll edit here by hand. There's no like buttons to choose. So I'll put in 300, and then you're going to hit submit. So that's there. So now I'm going to go back. I'm going to click brown noise flicker. So that's a lot more unstable looking. So that's kind of cool. But that's only the brown noise flicker. Don't forget, this is now nested inside an audio flicker. So let's back up one level. So that's with the audio flicker applied. Because the audio flicker is also changing from this brown noise flicker to the steel blue based on the audio, it actually subdues it a little bit, but this is essentially what you can expect to see. Now, maybe that's not what you want. And this is where I've got a lot of questions when I'm helping people is, oh man, do I got to start over? Not if it's the last effect you put in. If you put in like 3 or 4 after this, yeah, you're going to have to undo some stuff. But that's why I kind of recommend you look at it, you're happy with it, and I always start in my base. So I don't want this. I can go here, brown noise flicker, all highlighted, brown noise flickers here. Let's just turn that back to a deep sky blue and then click out. And now I've got rid of that effect. So you can go backwards, but it does depend what you want to do. if you've nested several things inside of each other and you try to take one out that's got a lot in it, everything that's in it's going to go away. So that's one thing to keep in mind. But you can do that. All right, so now I'm just going to leave this for our starting purposes as this audio flicker. All right, so now I've got my blast. So now I want to see the whole thing again. So click all the way at the top, click this in-out helper. Everything's now active. Let's check. I got the clash. It's a white. I like that. I've got a blast. I like that. Let's see the lockup. I don't like that lockup. Now, I know a lot of you know about localized lockup. I'm not going to cover that right now. And I'll probably have to use one of my effects. That's a hard one to start with for building. Um, there is a color change fork. I'm sure you've seen, heard of it. It does have a new localized lockup function that Matt built. That's awesome. But that's not in this editor. It's coming to his editor eventually. If we do get this merged, it'll be there. But for learning purposes, this is lockup. I don't want this to be my lockup. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into this side. And I'm going to try to find my lockup. And here you can see lockup color. Right now, the lockup color is an audio flicker of blue and white. So let's click audio flicker. That's not really what I want my blade to look like during lockup. I'd rather do something like the random per LED flicker. And again, if you use these, you'll learn them. So I'm going to grab the random per LED. So you grab the audio flicker. That's what I want to replace. I'm going to click random per LED. Now again, it's got its default colors. That's just a starting point. That's not what I want. So I want to go with a white. And then I want my second color to be the source of my blade. So back to deep sky blue. All right, so again, this is only showing that because that's all that's highlighted. So let's see what that lockup's going to look like now. So that is a little more what I wanted my lockup to look like. And again, just for starting purposes. All right, so now that's good. So now you'll see I have a drag color. So let's see what the drag color is. So the drag, now drag only affects the tip of the blade, but right now I'm looking at it as an effect. So I'm going to change this to random. So let me go back up just to show you this. So back, whenever you want to go back to your whole blade, go back up to the top, click in out helper. All right, so let's turn lockup's active. So that's the lockup. Let's turn lockup off. Let's activate drag. So that's drag. So it's still blue. That doesn't match the rest of my blade. Maybe that's what you want. Great. So you can choose your colors. You can go crazy. You can have all these mixes you want. I'm trying to get to a simple one, so I want to change this drag. So I'm going to turn the drag off. So now I got to go back in here, and here's my drag. I'm going to go to audio flicker. Audio flicker on drag can look nice actually. So I'll leave audio flicker, but I want that secondary, I want that main color to not be blue. I'm going to click it, and I'm going to put a deep sky blue back in there. All right, and then click. And that's a little more. Now, because audio flicker works off of the audio sound, when you have drag, there is a drag sound effect. So that's going to make it kind of look a little more like you'd want. So I'm going to leave that. I'll go up, back to in-out helper. Let's take a look at drag. So that's more like what I wanted to see for a drag. Now you could make it more erratic if you wanted. You could use the random per LED or the brown noise flicker. Those are the other two I would typically use. But again, use whatever you like. Those are just kind of my preferences, but everybody can do whatever they want in terms of what looks good to them. All right, so let's turn the drag off. So now, for the most part, this is all looking pretty good. So let's play around with it. So that's a slow retraction. I might want something faster. Usually what I typically do is I check my in file and my out file in my font, and I want to time it out. So you could use like Audacity or something, or you could just kind of use it by watching, checking it out. So I like to really sync up those sound effects. A lot of my sound effects that I put in my libraries, they're timed out to just one base font because I don't want to get crazy, but it's really easy. So let me show you that. So that's my ignition speed is okay. My retraction speed is a little slow. So I'm going to find those, and they are part of in-out helper. And part of this is, again, the experience and the knowledge. But so I'm going to look for, just on this side, I'm looking for something. There it is. Time to extend, time to retract. So time to extend is the out, time to retract is the in. So I'm going to edit them. So you're going to click. Now again, it's a number, so it'll blank everything else out. And I'm going to cut that. I want that to be 150 milliseconds. So then I'll submit. And that retraction was really slow. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to turn that retraction. Let's do like 500. Usually the retraction sounds are longer than the ignition in most fonts, but again, it's font specific. So I'll hit submit. And then black is the color when retracted. For sabers, that's almost always going to be the case. If you had like a crystal, you could put pulsing in there. I usually do that if you got accent lights, etc. But right now I'm focusing on the blade. I'll go back up to the top and now helper. So let's see. That's a good retraction. That's a good ignition. So now this is all good. So I'm going to say I'm happy with this. And you could go all through the whole thing, everything you want, but I'm happy with this. Next, I got to get this style into my config so that I can use it on my actual saber. So I am going to hit copy. So copy now, it's in your clipboard. You'll see it's already highlighted, but it's in your clipboard. Now I'm going to go over to my config. So uh, the config file, there's the manual covers this. Fredrik's site covers all this. There's a lot of pre-made within your within the OS that you can pull up. Um, so this just happens to be mine that I'm using right now. If I wanted to, there's two ways to add a style. You can replace an existing style, or you can add a new one. So let's first look at existing. So with this config file, just super quick, like refresher. The most important things is the number of blades. I only have one. Number of buttons, volume. Depending on your speaker, you can go loud. You could go a lot louder than this. This particular one didn't have the loudest speaker, and I don't want to blow it. Myself with clash threshold. So that's what triggers your clash. I usually do a 3 or a 2.5, and mostly it's because of the chassis I use. The speaker and the board are super close to each other, so I don't like false clashes at all. So I set that real high. I think that a lot of the defaults come in at 1. You might get a lot of false clashes, you might get none. But if you're getting that, I do 2.5 or 3 on almost all my sabers. But you can change that. And then the rest of these you don't have to worry about right now. And then here's where your presets start. So the preset, if you look in the manual, this first, in quotations, this is the name of the font folder on your SD card. This has to be spelled and capitalized exactly. If you have a misspelling, if you have you have it all lowercase, but on the SD card it's all uppercase, then it can't find your font. You'll get that font file not found, or yes, whatever the saying, the vocal is on the board, and it won't work. But so you need this, and this has to match what's on your SD card for that specific font. The next is the track, and that's what plays your music. Some people use dialogue, but yeah, you want to define that. And then below that, you'll see style PTR. That's your style. Now, I have some really big styles in here. This is actually my color change, and this is my full spectrum. That's a massive one. So you could just highlight the whole thing, and you're always going to look for these closing. So, and you'll get used to seeing this. This is the close of that style. So I'm going to go from here, and then I would go up. And normally styles are not this long unless you're using them from my library. But I will put that, and now I will paste that other style in place. So this is a typical style that was built out. So you can see obviously significantly smaller, but that's all set now. So now you will notice, and I didn't show this. Let me go back. So I bet when I went to highlight, yeah, for whatever reason, my WordPad always grabs that comma. When you're dropping in, that comma won't drop. So if I watch, so there's a comma right here after the dual bracket. So let me paste, and it might go away real quick, but there's no comma there. If that happens, you'll get a compile error. So you want to be diligent in watching it. So I'm going to put the comma there. And this is all in the manual as well, because I have the name afterwards. So I want that comma there. Otherwise, you'd get a compile error about the quotation. But so now that's good. So another thing in presets that just in trying to help people out, you can put line breaks. So some of the pre-existing configs, they're all crushed together. You can put line breaks in. You can add spaces. What you want to be careful of is your commas and your closed brackets. So the less than, because those are typically, at least in my experience, that's what usually trips people up. Is there a lot of times when I debug people's styles, because a lot of people send me their styles to debug, and I don't mind helping. A lot of times they're missing a closed bracket. They've got too many closed brackets. They're missing a comma. They've got a double comma somewhere. And that's almost all the time when somebody's getting a compiler or when somebody's style won't work, is that. So you want to always be mindful. So if you're using the editor like I just showed you, that won't happen unless you copy over something. But if you're building your styles on your own, Those are usually what kind of messes stuff up is forgetting a bracket or forgetting a comma. All right, so I added that one in. So now say, instead of doing that, let me put the other one back. Now instead, I want a new one. So I can do that too. So here, I like to put breaks in. And again, you can put line breaks. It won't affect anything. I'm going to start a new one. So, and again, I would refer to the manual if you haven't done this, just so you get all this stuff down. But you're going to open the bracket. Um, for our purposes, I'm going to put a different font folder in, and it has to be exact to what's on your SD card. And then I will use a track, and these are the default tracks that are available if you pull them down from Fredrik's site, and then comma. And then I always, before I put the style in, just to make sure I never forget, I always close and I always put the comma. The comma just tells it that there's another preset below it, so you want to have that there after. So this is what I put in. And then here, I do my line breaks, just so I keep everything clean. Now, this one's ready to receive a style. So you can go back to style editor, you can build a new style. But what I'm going to show you now, I have a library of styles. Now, this is just over time, I've built a lot of styles. I enjoy making them. I try to come up with new stuff, and I post them if they're for the main OS. I'll always post them on the sharing thread. But I found the sharing thread was getting large and hard to use, and I have so many styles I can't run them all at once on a config. So I was kind of losing track of my own styles. So I decided to make a library. Plus, I get a lot of people asking me for styles. So rather than having to keep answer PMs and all that, I would put them in a library. So the library is there to help. It's free to use. If you like my stuff and you want to use it, great. If you kind of like my stuff and you want to edit it, let me show you how to do that. If you don't like my stuff, hey, I'm showing you how to make your own. That's the whole purpose here. But so I'm going to grab this one. So you can, if you want to edit it, so say there's something you didn't love about it, say my colors aren't exactly kind of what you wanted, my effects weren't what you wanted, but some of it you like and you want a starting point. You could do view and style editor, or you can copy. So let's do the copy. So I'm going to do copy, and then I'm going to go to style editor, and I'm going to paste it in this box. Now pasting it, you have to hit submit. But by hitting submit, it will have dropped that into here. Did it? Yeah, it should have. There it is. So submit dropped it in. So now I've got that style from the library in there. And let me just show you, just so, because it ended up being the same color blade, let me show you a different setup so you can see what happens. So I'll go back to the style editor. So you want to get rid of what's here. So you can delete it also. And then I will paste. And then pasting doesn't change anything until you hit submit. And then submit puts it in. And now this is all editable just like we went through. So say, all right, so let's take a look at it. Say there was something, say blast. Like I usually use white blast and white clash. Mostly, again, personal preference. When I'm using my Saber, I am in the 501st. I do a lot of events. I find that the white in those events, whether it be for pictures or also just for people to see it, white looks the best to me in a lot of cases. But a lot of people like yellow. And the films are really inconsistent. The cartoons are kind of inconsistent. Some people are going to say it's always yellow. I'd say go watch Force Awakens. I say go watch some of the prequels. But it's moot. There's no reason to argue over what I think looks best versus what you think looks best. That's the beauty of this. So, all right, you don't want the white blast. So find the blast here. Click it. I want yellow. Got yellow. I don't want the clash. So let me see. So there's a lot in my styles. They are long. That's why I put them in a library. But here's the clash. You're going to just read for it. I'm going to go. I'm going to make a yellow clash. And then again, I want to be able to see everything. You're always going to go to the top. Choose your starting point. And now let's see. So that's the yellow clash. That's the yellow blast. All right. So, and you could go to town changing the colors. You can go to town changing it all up. But for our purposes, and also because this video is getting long, I'm going to copy this. And then I'm going to go back, and I had already set this up to take it in. I'm going to paste that style in. All right. And so now if I want to put, so you'll see here, I don't have a comma. But the reason I have a comma here is because I had the name of it. If you want to use that, some people do, some people don't. Put a comma in, and then put a name, and I'll just call this one Ray. and you're good. If you don't put it in, that comma is unnecessary. Unless you have more than one blade, obviously this is all one blade setup. If you have crystal chambers, if you have cross guards, you need the commas to separate the styles. There's a lot of different things. So if you're doing different things and you have that comma, don't wipe it out. But so that's that. So now this is all good. So here's a trick, and here's something I myself am guilty of. Make sure you save your config file before you go to compile. I can't tell you how many times I'm in a rush. I have something I really want to put on the Saber. I put my style in. I'm all good to go. I jump over to Arduino. I push the button. It loads up fine. I grab the Saber, ignite it, and it's not the style I wanted. And I sit there and I'm like, did I do something wrong? So that happens. It's usually for myself. It's because I forgot to save the config. So save the config. So I'm going to click save. It's saved. Now I'm going to go. So once your config saved, and this is assuming your config is already in your Proffieboard INO. And if it's not, read the manual. The manual will be much better at this than I will. But right here, you'll see where the define config is. So if this is something else than what I was just working on, that's not going to load up. But since this one's already set up, it is. So now it's good. I think I hooked my Saber up. Let me put my Saber. Oops, no, my USB isn't plugged in. All right, so now my Saber should be good. And then config set. I save the config, and then I will upload. And barring any technical embarrassments, which do happen, this should load up. I need the Jeopardy music playing. I don't have that. So while that's doing that, if you get a compiler, which is all the orange that'll shoot up, don't panic. And I say that from experience. So now here's a bunch of orange text, but this is the good text. Also, I did this myself starting out. If you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, it didn't load. That means it didn't see your board, which means go back, read that manual. If you're on Windows, use the Zadig. The very first time I had it, I loaded it. It said 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I was like, sweet. I was like, wow, that was fast. And I unplugged it, and it was the wrong color, and I couldn't figure it out. And I can't tell you how many times I kept attempting it because I thought that was a countdown to it being done. It isn't. This is what the screen should look like. And at the very end, when it's done, so this will keep going, until this gets to 100%, your board isn't done. So patience is obviously important too. But it's getting there. And if you're impatient like me, you keep scrolling with it. There we go. So now it was done. And it will say file downloaded successfully. All right. So now, obviously, I've been doing this a while. If you get an error, don't panic. Number one. Number two, there's usually going to tell you what the errors were. It looks like a lot of text, but I'm going to tell you from experience. If you read through the text, the first two groups usually, sometimes three, it's going to try to tell you in as basic English as is possible something's wrong. A lot of times, again, going back, it's that comma, it's an extra bracket, sometimes it's a typo. Um, it might help you if you can read that. If you can't, you don't have to do it alone. And that's the most important thing about Profi. There is so much help available, and I want to show that. So this all went great. Hopefully you see the idea of the style editor. There is so much more to do it. I hope you explore it. But the last piece I want to kind of impress on everybody is there is a lot of help available. Don't get flustered. Don't get upset. You know, every single one of us, except for Fredrik, who obviously knows this stuff like the back of his hand, started not knowing it, and we got to the point. Every one of us who is giving you some help or some advice through any of the different methods, we started off not knowing, and we now understand enough to help. In some cases, there is stuff that people are better at helping than I am. And in some cases, there's stuff that people try to help, and then I'll sometimes try to help out too because I kind of feel like, oh, you know what, I would do that different. Everybody being helpful is what makes this community great. So take all the help you can get, but don't feel like you have to go this alone. And especially don't be afraid to ask questions. You know, I know I've had some people say, "Oh man, I feel like it's a stupid question, and I already know somebody's going to say read the manual as the answer." Some people will say that because a lot of times the answer is in the manual. But just because you didn't see the answer doesn't mean you did anything wrong. Doesn't mean you're, a noob or you're not intelligent. It just means you didn't find the answer. And if you've done what you think you can do to that point, and you ask a question, yeah, somebody might say read the manual. Don't take that as being a negative. Don't take that as somebody, trying to put you down. That for their experience, the answer was in the manual and they found it. You're going to have a lot of other people in this group who said, yeah, you know what, I was where you were. I didn't find the answer in the manual, but I did actually fix this once. Here's how I did it. So you will, if answers aren't helpful, don't let them turn you off. It's just that person's experience and that person's answer isn't matching with your experience and the answer you need. So take other answers, take input. So let me show you just to close that out because that was kind of a soapbox. The best places to go. All right. So if you're not a member of the TRA forum and you're using Profi, I don't know why people are scared of forums. Just sign up so you can ask a question. It's not like a cult. It's a great resource for two reasons. The forum is mostly question and answer. You'll get a little back and forth chatter, but it's question and answer. Um, Facebook, which is great, and I partake a lot. Facebook is kind of like a meeting place. So it's not as, it's helpful to get quick answers, but there's also a lot of noise. There's also a lot of, sometimes it's not necessarily that people intentionally gave bad answers, but people's answers aren't necessarily as informed as you're hoping. So if you're brand new and you want to get started, I definitely say the forum. And most important, in the forum, so get the TRA, just take the 2 seconds to sign up. You're going to find Professor Zorn's lab here. And then in his lab, there's a lot of back and forth. There is the newbie thread. And this is usually at the top, but look for it. You can also search. Ask questions here. Read this too, because there's so many questions from people who had the same experience you may have already had and got an answer. You can find it. But if you can't find the answer because there's so many pages, ask the question. Fredrik in particular is great at answering. A lot of times, though, some of these people who've already experienced it will answer. But this is just a great resource and this is a great start point. But the takeaway: don't feel like because you had a mistake, because you didn't compile, because something isn't as obvious to you, that you shouldn't ask questions. Ask a question because you're going to get an answer, and that answer will help you. And then once you get past that first setup, that first install, it gets so much easier to the point that you will then be one of those people answering questions. So TRA, 100% recommended. The other place is obviously the open source group. A lot of really helpful people. A lot of people also who are in the exact same boat. There's a lot of new people coming in who are doing the same thing you're doing right now, and they might be having the same experience, and they may have gotten an answer from somebody right before you asked it. So ask your questions here. And again, if you get somebody saying, oh, you should know that or whatever, I don't see that often. Usually I do see people saying refer to the manual. I say refer to the manual myself because the answer is there. But if you read the manual and you don't find the answer, just say, hey, I read the manual. I'm having a hard time with this. There's no shame in asking for help because, again, we all had help to get to where we are. So do that. So ask your question. There's also a lot of people who offer their help. That is what makes this group great. And you're going to see, I mean, we're all people. Sometimes you're going to see somebody give an answer and then somebody give a different answer slightly, and then maybe we'll go back and forth. I'm guilty of that. It's just because everybody's trying to help with what their knowledge is. So don't even take like if you get two responses and they're slightly different, don't take that the wrong way. It's people trying to help you, but the help is there. So those are great resources. And then lastly, of course, is Fredrik's site, which a lot of this is duplicated from the manual, but he's got all links to everything. So he's got the software. He walks you through all of this. Read through it. If it looks overwhelming and confusing, you know, read it in pieces, read chunks of it. Go look at the videos. There are the videos. Again, Tom Meg26 has a lot of videos. Some of them, some people are saying are need updating. I don't know. I think a lot of it's still relevant. But at any rate, the more information you can gather from the more sources, the better. But look at that. And then, like I've said, I go by FET263 on the forum. You'll find my stuff. But I am definitely not the only guy out there. and I don't intend to be. So, you can use my library, you can use the sharing thread. There's other libraries that people put together. There's other people who throw their styles up on Facebook. Just look at all the possibilities and pick what you like and use what you like and make your own. And if you have something that you're proud of, share it. That's really what got me started. I played around with this editor so much and I made so many styles and I was happy with them and I was proud of them and I decided to share them. And then so people got interested in them, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. And that's really how it all starts. Is having fun, enjoying your saber, getting help when you need it, and then when you are able to help somebody, helping the next person out. So I probably ranted for a while. Hopefully, I didn't lose your interest. Hopefully, I maybe taught you a thing or two about the style editor and getting that stuff in your config. Obviously, there's other stuff that you have to do. You do have to get your Arduino set up. I'm going to say it, but the manual really helps with that. Um, you have to get the right downloads. If you have your Saber from an installer, definitely ask them for that config if they did not provide it. Now, if you had it installed a while ago, you can't get in touch with your installer, or for whatever reason they don't have it. Most of them, I think, put it on the SD card, or they should. But you need the config file in its raw nature to do these edits. You can't pull. I've had that question, and I know other people already answered this. Uh, you can't pull a config off of a board once it's been flashed. So you do need that. Now, if you can't find your config, if you have no idea, there's files available from a number of people in the open source group. There's a number of default config files, again, in the OS, and so you can also use those as a starting point. You might have to rebuild some stuff, but it's available. But yeah, if you go into the OS, and I have a lot of OSs. I'm going to tell you that right now because I did a lot of testing on stuff. But you go in and you'll find your config folder and you'll see there's a lot in here. Usually probably start with like the default Profi, but there's a lot based on Saber. You do have to make sure, obviously, if you have NeoPixel or LED, there's a lot of stuff. Again, manual covers that, so definitely read it. If you read the manual, you don't find your answer, you're unsure of it, ask for help. But the config file is very important to get all this underway. So thanks for sticking around and listening. I hope I helped a couple people. If you learn from this and somebody else asks a question and you know the answer, jump in and help them. All right, that's what makes this group and this open source so great. So thanks you all and enjoy.